These four great civilizations are the Russians, the Germans, the British, and the Americans. Now, what's interesting about all four civilizations is that they all claim to be the ultimate Christian civilizations that are heirs to Rome. But because of the differences in their geography and their culture, they have different interpretations of Christianity and Romanness. Okay, so let's compare and contrast these four great civilizations. The Russians, as you know, Russia is the largest landmass in the world. It is huge. It is also really cold and dark. Okay, so the geography transformed the Russian character. Okay, Germany, in contrast, it is within Europe, and it does not have the natural boundaries that the other nations have. It is always being attacked and threatened by adversaries. Okay? The British, it's an island fortress. The Americans are the most interesting because it is a continental fortress. It is not only invincible, it cannot be invaded, but it also has all the resources it needs in order to have a thriving modern economy. Therefore, America can choose to isolate itself from the rest of the world. Okay? Now, because of the difference in geography, you have differences in Christianity and in its Romanness. So the Russians believe that they are heirs to the Byzantine Empire. And as such, they are the protectors of something called Eastern Orthodoxy. Okay, so to understand what Eastern Orthodoxy is, think of Augustine. Okay, we read Augustine, City of God. So it is a very mystical, metaphorical, collectivist attitude towards religion. In contrast, the Germans believe that they are heirs to the Holy Roman Empire, first initiated by Charlemagne. And as such, they are more Catholic than the Russians. Okay? Then you have the British, who believe they are heirs to the real Roman Empire, and their religion is Anglicanism. Okay? Remember, Anglicanism, there's really little difference between Catholicism and Anglicanism. When in Anglicanism, you swear allegiance to the King of England. In Catholicism, you swear allegiance to the Pope of the Vatican. And then you have the Americans, who believe that they are the heirs to the Roman Republic, okay? Not the empire, the Republic, before the time of Julius Caesar, the best form of government in the world. Their religion, so the elite is something we call deist, okay? So they believe in God, but God as someone who is removed from the world. You also have many different sects of Protestantism, okay? So the religion in America, it is very diffuse, very diverse, okay? So different cultural outlooks will also determine their cultural identities. So for example, the Russians, they have, the thing that differentiates the Russians is they have a very dark imagination. So some of the greatest literature, some of the greatest music, philosophy actually comes from Russia. So think of Tolstoy, Dostoevsky. In terms of music, you have Tchaikovsky and Stravinsky. Okay? I will also show you that the Russians produced the greatest geopolitical leaders in history. So in the 20th century, the greatest geopolitical leader was actually Joseph Stalin. And I'll show you this is the case when we move to the 20th century. Today, the greatest geopolitical leader in the world is Vladimir Putin. So there's something about the Russian dark imagination that produces men of genius to lead their countries. The Russian cultural identity is the idea of Mother Russia, the land itself, the nation, the people. It is divine. All right? And so the main objective of all Russian geopolitical leaders is to protect its borders from enemies. Because Russia is so huge and encompasses 2 continents, it has a lot of geopolitical enemies. Okay? So that's the Russian civilization. When we move to the Germans are really interesting because the Germans have also one of the great human civilizations in history. Okay, so rather than a dark imagination, the Germans believed in the idea of will to power. We will discuss this when we discuss German philosophy, especially Nietzsche. Okay, but the idea is this, that we have the capacity to impose our will on reality. That's the idea of will to power. We are not subject to culture. We're not subject to reality. There are great men among us who can impose their will on all of us. Okay, and that's why you have Hitler and the Nazis. Okay, what the Germans believe in is the idea of Lebensraum. Okay, Lebensraum. I know this is a hard word. It's a German word, but it's actually a pretty easy concept. The concept is called living space. So throughout its history, the German people have always been invaded, attacked by its adversaries. So to protect itself, it needs living space. It needs to move out and colonize its surrounding territories, Poland, Russia, Austria, and make it more German so that the German nation can thrive. Okay? Very simple concept. Okay? But this is the concept that drives the German military strategy in World War I and World War II. Okay? Lebensraum. You have the British, and the British, as we discussed last class, they are a very practical people. Their philosophy is imperialism and utilitarianism, okay? It's not a question of what is right or what is ideal. It's a question of what works now, okay? The British are extremely practical. The British Empire is based on the concept of white man's burden, meaning that the British culture is inherently superior to all other cultures. And as such, the British have a responsibility to go out and civilize and educate and enlighten all others, okay? So this is the philosophy that drives the British Empire. The Americans are interesting because they are a new civilization, and they try to base their culture on the ideas of the Enlightenment, okay? So Rousseau, Kant, especially John Locke. Their driving ideology is the idea of manifest destiny. So the idea of manifest destiny is that it is the obvious will of God for America to control the entire Western Hemisphere. That's why Trump today is saying, we should take over Canada, we should take over Greenland, because that's always been part of the American understanding of the world. It is God's will that America will eventually control all the entire Western Hemisphere. Canada will eventually come into America as well, and eventually America will drive out all European powers, including Denmark and Britain, from the Western Hemisphere. Okay? So next class we'll discuss America in greater detail. Today we will focus on the British Empire, which is founded by William Shakespeare. Okay? So we will discuss William Shakespeare today. Next week we'll start to focus on the Russians and the Germans. Okay? But these are the four great civilizations that will drive history from the 19th century up to today. Okay? And I will also show you later on that it is actually the conflict between these four great civilizations that will drive human creativity, science, technology, philosophy. Okay? And that's why from about 1800 up until 2000, you had a tremendous flowering of ideas and culture. Okay?